Welcome back, and thank you for joining us. Uh, you know, having attended couple of conferences and discussions, I think so. There's an interesting time of the conference where I feel we will be discussing more on where we are headed as an industry rather than whether this industry will survive. So probably we have moved from an hype cycle, and the current volumes that we just saw are encouraging to see how the really EV ecosystem really spreads out going forward. Although the existing growth revolves around e-rickshaw and partially the electric two-wheelers, there are a couple of areas that we really need to understand from the panelists today and address that. I would say if we can highlight how are we going to look at the future growth of the EV industry beyond the product into the battery technologies, speak about localization, uh, end of lives, and how we can support the entire industry in growing together rather than in bits and parts. Currently what we are trying to do is create a product and then see whatever is ready we try to localize, and then that gap will just further widen because of the sheer volume of growth that we are envisaging going forward. So today we have a very distinguished and extremely diverse panel that we have today. So let's try and understand what they have to uh, say about the industry going forward. So I'll start with you, Amitabh. Amitabh, coming from a three-wheel space where it's been seen, we've almost three-wheel for us. It's always become a e-rickshaw or a e-cart kind of an vision. Of late, we are seeing an traction in the L5N and L5M category also. Whatever growth that we have envisaged today or seen up till now is largely driven by B2B. Uh, how do you think the retail customer are likely to react, and what product changes are likely to be expected to address the growing needs of the retail space? Thoughts?
Thanks, Sunil. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining in the morning. So, when we started, yes, B2B is the space to be, and about 10 to 12, maybe 14% of the market, as far as L5 cargo is concerned, is B2B. Of course, for passenger, there is no B2B. So, in cargo segment, that's where everyone, all the startups, all the incumbents landed up ending there. But the larger market, 85% plus, is B2C. And I think there the product has to speak for itself. It's not about acquiring numbers, it is about each one's livelihood. So, and they're very particular about the product, no nicks, no dents, color consistency, everything. I mean, it really puts a startup at least on its toes. There we found, so starting March 2023, 50% of our sales happen in B2C. So you'll be surprised to know, and I'm just giving a statistic about us. We have dealerships in 30 cities, but our customers are plying our vehicles in over 120 cities and towns of the country. Small numbers, but the important thing is people are accepting that the TCO benefits make a lot of difference to them. The one thing that will really spur this industry is financing. I think B2B financing was easy to get because you're financing, a P&L statement. But when it comes to owner driver, suddenly things change because it's very difficult. A lot of them are immigrants. Sometimes they don't have permanent houses, and hence captive financing has been, something that has been prevalent in the industry. But that can't continue endlessly, right? It's sad that today financing, even with the fintechs, comes to about 24% IRR, right? Versus if you buy a two-wheeler or a passenger vehicle, it's 6 to 8 to 9%. And this is a person who's running it for his livelihood. You're buying it for comfort. It's a huge disparity. But I think with data that EVs are generating, I think that change is beginning to happen. So more and more you will start seeing B2C penetration. I'm very, very hopeful that that change is happening very quickly now.
Thanks for the starters. I think so. I like to elaborate on the B2C distribution and the financing aspect at the later stage. Uh, you know, you spoke about B2C. Are you observing the similar space as the Kinetic and two wheeler coming from an iconic brand? We are still looking at uh, very niche penetrations of electric two wheelers yet. Uh, in my mind, unless we look at the e-motorcycle space, the real growth seems to be a long shot here. What are your thoughts?
Good morning, everybody. So, thank you very much for having me here, and big congratulations to TWF team for organizing this, and thank you to my panel members. So, Jinal, I think I will maybe speak about Kinetic Green later, but since you mentioned about two-wheeler space and B2B and B2C space, I think we must see in two-wheeler, electric two-wheeler, I would say, what we see as a number is not the real number, because what we only see the regulated numbers, we only see the registered number. But if you look at the entire two-wheeler industry, which is electric, our sense is that maybe more than 2x or 3x is the unorganized market, which happens in most of the, I would say, many states which are not registered, not reported. We don't know how much of that business is. But at the end, it is adding to the mobility for the masses, right? And the price points are also less than 50 grams and all. And then most of them are, of course, B2C. But if you look at the B2B business side of it, I think you will see around 60-70% of share is again from these so-called low speed and unregistered vehicles, which are again unregulated. So nobody has any clue in the industry that how big this industry is. But the good news is that whatever is the regulatory type of, let's say, vehicles or the reported numbers in so-called Vahan, they are growing, and they are growing at a very, very, very encouraging speed. So as an industry, I think we have reached to around 8.5, 9% penetration, which is almost, I would say, 30-40% over last year. And we see that it will further go up, and there are no reason why it should not go up, because not only the young generation, and I think the awareness of the people towards the electric vehicle is increasing. And it's not only two-wheeler, I'm saying even in four-wheeler you all would see is changing. Coming to Kinetic Green, I think as a brand, our vision is very, very clear that we are here to provide mobility for masses, which means that not only in three-wheeler, which Amitabh just mentioned, for two-wheeler, currently we have three segments. We recently launched the so-called e-Luna, which I'm sure everybody would have known, seen, or heard, or experienced. We just launched 10, 12 days back, and we are getting huge response. And I think the reason behind this product, or the vision behind this product, was clearly to look at the bottom of the pyramid. Because if you look at the entire two-wheeler industry, more than 80-85% volume is coming more than 100,000 rupees. Of course, now it's changing, and it's all supported by subsidies. But it's not going to drive the electric vehicle penetration in two-wheeler, because the around 30 to 40%, I would say, volume is still less than around 80,000 of rupees. I'm talking about the ICE. So unless any brand, or let's say products related to or under that brand, comes into that particular price point, the EV adoption will not increase. And we are very, very sure that with this e-Luna, this EV penetration, not only in the industry, even in this segment, will definitely go up. Second, we are also in the family scooter. We are also in the personal mobility, which is our Zulu and our Flex. So we are very hopeful that going forward, I mean, of course, there are few dark clouds over the fame, but we are very, very hopeful that this journey will continue, and it is going to go up and up, because the customers are asking. Uh, Earlier, it was only, let's say, spread out in few states in India, but now if you see in last 2 years, barring hilly areas, I think entire India is covered in terms of penetration. Of course, there are few what do you say, exceptional states which have roughly 10-15% penetration. But now states like UP, states like Bihar, states like Odisha, they're also coming up. So the EV penetration is increasing. So we are very, very hopeful that this trend will continue, and we are going to have a long journey here.
Thanks. I think so. There's a similar echo. I see that there is a geographical spread that's happening. You are seeing a traction on that front. You also mentioned on the unregulated or unregistered vehicle having a larger share of pie today. I think so. That's with any sunrise industry. There is a huge opportunity. So unless the organized segment really jumps on, or there is a regulatory environment that kicks in. Uh, but I think so that's also creating awareness within the masses. And it's, to me, I look at it a little differently. You are actually educating the bottom of pyramid, right? It's in a way a welcome change. You have less work to do in terms of educating. Those are the guys who are actually going to learn and say, hey, I need a better product, I need a better service, I need to associate with a more reliable brand in a way. And that's where I think so their demands for better product, better components, and better service will come in. So we'll expand on those thoughts. So Achal, you come from an interesting space, the e-buses, and that's an area where we saw an innovation in terms of business model to make it really viable. Now, we have talked about some asset light models and some, but the success here, what do you think on the ground reality, whether the GCC model for buses has really worked? Uh, Question one. Question two, we are still struggling with the localization levels in terms of buses, and at the same time, we are looking at significant commitments towards state fleets to be electrified. So there is a gap here in terms of financing, in terms of localization. And so how do you see this, and complementing, what are your learnings that you can translate to two-wheel, three-wheel?
So, hi, I'm from PMI Electromobility. PMI Electromobility is one of the leading e-bus manufacturers. We have about 1,300 e-buses on road currently with a very sturdy order book. So, I think first question that you asked is GCC really effective? I don't know how else this would have taken off if GCC wasn't effective. Even now when we talk about GCC model, we talk about, okay, will the STUs pay? Because, for those who don't know, the way GCC models work here is that the STUs never, they pay you for the operation of the bus. They really don't buy the bus at the first place. So it's the OEM with an operator or an investor or by itself that operates the bus for 10 to 12 years, whatever the tenure of the contract may be. And in return, the STU keeps paying the OEM a fixed price and for a minimum guaranteed kilometers. Now, whenever you are going to get these finance, the first question that comes up is, will the STU pay? Now, if we are questioning if the STU will be able to pay whatever the operation cost is, which turns out to be 5-6 crores a year or about that, how would we ever expected STU to be able to buy 100 crore worth of, say, a bus is typical? I don't want to take a number, but and the number we like to use is a bus is about a crore. So how would have STUs paid 100 crores in 1 year if it had to buy 100 buses? So e-buses, the total cost of ownership over the life of, e-buses, when we calculate the total cost of ownership, it's about for 10, 12 years. That's significantly lower than your traditional ICE vehicles. It's just that we cannot afford them upfront. That's why all that financing is necessary, all those models are necessary. Hence, I strongly believe, had the GCC model not been there, this would have not taken off. E-buses in India have, currently we have more than about 7,000 e-buses in India currently plying across the country, which is one of the biggest numbers across the world. Plus, there is a strong commitment by the central government to have 8 lakh buses on road by 2030.
8 lakh, you said?
Yes.
Wow.
Throughout, I think, last 2-3 months, there have been a lot of discussions on how to make
So
this
you're going to be
happen.
really busy.
I hope. But there have been very strong discussions on how to make this happen. The e-bus segment, I could have a biased view, but here I have seen such strong commitments by the government
Interesting.
in trying to, they continuously call us, have all these brainstorming sessions. They want to really understand what is working, what is not working. How can they remove any roadblocks that we are facing as OEMs, as operators, as financiers, all of those in, being able to fly? Because yes, you can have two wheelers, you can have three wheelers, you can have cars, but the number of passengers that one bus carries is humongous. Plus, even though we don't have the infra status, yes, but e-buses really are a part of your critical infrastructure. It's like as good as a metro, right? You need to have that availability to have smooth access of transportation. The other big difference we've seen is that there is a lot of emphasis in making these things happen in tier 2, tier 3 cities as well. It is not that, okay, e-bus is a fancy product that should be flying only in big cities. Everybody deserves cleaner air, everybody deserves comfortable mode of transportation, and everybody deserves that connectivity across the country. So this is one of the biggest pushes I have seen, is in the e-bus segment. Now, one of the biggest things, challenges that we as OEMs or as these GCC operators saw was whether STU will pay up. But the latest tender that came about, which was the PM e-bus Seva tender, in which they, it's going to be overall 10,000 buses. We just had the first segment, which was 3,600 buses. This was the first time we saw payment security mechanisms. So one of the biggest challenges we would face when we were to apply for loans or if we were to get investors or anything of that sort is actually taken care of. And it's been an amazing effort by the government to make this happen. It makes our life so much easier so that your payments are secured. And even though we've always had a good relationship with our STUs, we've not faced, touch wood, any of these challenges. This payment security mechanism adds an additional layer of comfort for everyone out there that, okay, in case the STUs are not able to pay up, the government is sitting for you. The center is sitting for you actually here. So that has been amazing shift. The last point you said was for localization. Look here, everyone is working really hard to make this happen. Okay, all the OEMs. I speak about my OEM, but I'm also going to commend all the OEMs out there. There are 5, 6 of us in this market. Everyone's worked very hard to make this happen. We have been reaching the targets that have been prescribed for us. Everyone's been very innovative in getting there. Semiconductors is definitely one place. Yes, we don't have lithium as much, we don't have cells as much. This, like, an industry wide, we have that dependence. But over time, again, the country which we are in is a very hardworking country and is a very innovative company. Yes, we have found some lithium and that will eventually convert into cells, but also that I think people are looking for another innovative materials out there as well.
Sure. Sure. I think so. It's very encouraging to learn that, you as an OEM are seeing a comfort of volumes coming in, comfort of financial security. Amitabh mentioned there is it's an interesting aspect you have a customer, uh, but you're not sure of its credit worthiness. And similar story, even Amitabh said that the customer is probably ready. I think so. We need to really bridge gap that financial mechanisms. Uh, you also mentioned about localization. Anish, I'd like to bring you in on this. Being a component supplier here, right? I mean, you become a very important part of the ecosystem, because that's an area which is probably fairly untouched today in terms of localization. Achal mentioned semiconductors. I'll go a couple of value chain down, right from electronic components to motors to connectors, also even the charging infrastructure. There's a whole room of opportunity. Where are we today in terms of capturing those?
Thanks, Dinal. Thanks for your question and thanks for having us on the podium today. Good morning to all. I'm a director in Sterling G-Tech Mobility. We are one of the first movers in the space of the EV supply chain as part of our offering, which was motor control units to begin with in 2019. When we started this journey, I remember the COVID pandemic hit and we didn't know whether EV will really take off for the next couple of years because we never knew if the pandemic would subside in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, etc. Thankfully, we're beyond that, and I feel in terms of localization within the auto component industry, a lot of the localization since the 80s started with the Japanese OEMs coming in with the likes of Maruti Suzuki, etc. So a lot of the localization happened in the mechanical areas such as castings, forgings, machinings,
We are still there.
plastics.
We have not moved beyond the
Yeah, so
mechanical
that
aspect.
started in the 80s, and that's how my parent business started also. But if we want to transition towards cleaner mobility by way of electrification or hybrids or hydrogen also in the future, I think a lot of the products will be more electrical oriented, more electronic oriented, and more software oriented. So, with regards to electronics and electricals, I feel we're still doing box build in India at a high level, barring a few companies, including us. But even for our company, when we're doing inverters or motor control units, uh, the board level components which go on the PCB, and I'm sure you know that from your experience because you've done that for 20 years, most of them are not made in India, barring a few passive components such as resistors, capacitors. Active components like semiconductors, such as semiconductors, IGBTs, MOSFETs, etc., connectors, as you mentioned, they haven't been localized, and for us to localize them, I think it'll take some time. I think the investments to localize those components, these active components, are in billions of dollars, and some of the larger groups such as Tata's and uh, uh, I think Israel Telecom has also announced a program to localize some semiconductors in India. So I think once that starts happening, this ecosystem will get more and more mature for all the electronics that goes into an electric vehicle or a hybrid vehicle. But I think we're at the beginning part of this journey, and it'll easily take 10 to 15 years to get there.
10 to 15 years in my mind is too long. I'd like to have a quick follow-up question on that. What volumes do you see to make the backward integration viable today? I understand that you have some commitments from your customers. So can't we have your vendors, upgrading or localizing from where you're sourcing? Why is that not happening?
So, if you look at any kind of electronics, ECU or any kind of electronics item which goes into an EV, the mechanical components such as the castings, the plastic injection moldings, etc., the lugs, the O-rings, the fasteners are all localized here in India.
All low value add,
Yeah,
but
they're low value item. They were given. You've already localized them, but to localize, as I said, the MOSFETs, the IGBTs, certain through-hole capacitors, etc. There is no supply chain. You to create a MOSFET, which is say AEC, automotive grade qualified, etc. Uh, the players need to be there in the Indian market to actually produce them for us to buy from them. But right now, the big boys such as ST Microelectronics, Infineon, etc., are all producing overseas, and you have to import from them to actually populate your boards here in India.
sure, I'll come back to that. I have a couple of follow-up questions because I'm part of the electronic manufacturing cluster development. I work with a lot of government organizations to help SMEs see the value proposition of manufacturing in India and make a viable case for them. So I have a lot of follow-up thoughts on that. Amitabh, I'll come back to you. You mentioned distribution, geographic spread, and retail customers, right? Uh, when we move from B2B to B2C space and move from tier 1 to tier 2 or tier 3s where you are seeing some traction here and there, how do you envisage the distribution structure evolving? Because in a typical ICE product, any distributor would have an incentive to set up a distributor or a dealership because there are 30-40% kind of service revenue that's likely to come up. With EVs, I think so it's not even beyond 10 to 15% kind of a service revenue, right? Uh, so in that case, what value proposition you have to offer for your dealers to spread into tier 2, tier 3? Two, um, it's we have been in this for almost 4 or 5 years. The kind of interest component that you're talking about, 24%, is unlikely. It's kind of an age-old uh, non-institutional funding kind of interest rate that I heard of you from today. Why is industry not pushing the government to regulate that? I can draw parallels from solar industry where even the interest rate for similar, we had the same issues that time also. So for the volumes to happen, these two financing has to happen, and the interest of distributors and dealers in the ecosystem has to happen. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, sure. So I'll speak from a three-wheeler industry perspective alone. Okay. So what's happening? I think there was a time when our dealers used to think कि मतलब इससे पैसा कैसे बनेगा? मतलब, what can you do with it? I think that has changed very, very rapidly. You know, three-wheeler industry, you realize most of the repairs happen alongside the road, right? No one
True.
comes to the dealership at all. So number one, this was never their thinking that we're going to make a lot of service revenue. Most of these guys don't make service revenue. However, with electrification, the stickiness with the dealer has increased manyfold. Why? Because if you have to do a regular, let's say a tire swap or a brake liner or whatever you have to change, you are likely to come back to the dealer just because first transparency is important, so that we ensure in terms of pricing and all that. But the second thing is, while he's there, वो बोलता है कि वो सर जरा चेक कर लेना इलेक्ट्रिक ठीक चल रहा है ना. It's so surprising that today some of our dealers have actually increased the size of their service areas just because they are seeing many more vehicles coming there. In fact, denting, painting is also happening at the dealerships today. That's the really strange part. And I think maybe things will change.
Is that a feel because you have bought a premium product and maybe
हो सकता है. It is possible
पहले के
that that
ऑटो
is
में
the
कितने भी
case.
डेंट लगो कोई जाता नहीं था.
See, one thing that we as a company wanted to push was the pride in owning a electric vehicle. We wanted that to be the number one thing कि मतलब salute आपने electric को trust किया for your livelihood. And hence the size of our dealerships, the corporate identities that we give in dealerships, the place we give them to sit and a clean bathroom. You'll be surprised at the small things that they want to see when they come to a dealership, which was being given. आप सोचो 3.5 लाख की गाड़ी आती है, एक अल्टो आती है, something like that. You see that buying experience. 3.5 लाख का ही डीजल थ्री व्हीलर होता है. You see the difference in the buying experience. वहाँ एयर कंडीशन शोरूम है, वो कोई आके पूछ रहा है सर कौन सा कलर लेंगे, क्या फाइनेंसिंग होगी सर आपकी. यहाँ पे तो बस परमिट नहीं है बस. It's very, very strange. So that change has to happen. That change is bringing them more to that pride and saying that यार अगर price similar है तो I might as well get service there if the price is similar. Plus electric, of course, you can't get serviced on the street. So that stickiness to come to the dealership is increased. That is clear. I think on the financing part, a lot of people, traditional financiers, including banks, they never used to service three wheelers because it was a very ad hoc financing that used to happen. Largely captive financing by the OEM itself that was typically taking place.
Right.
I think with the advent of data coming in from EVs, I see a shift that's already happening. अभी तो गाड़ी खरीद के ले गया उसके बाद you don't even know where that vehicle is, right? कुछ no idea. Today you get to know every second where that vehicle is, and if you own an Altigreen, then you also know that the vehicle is there even when the vehicle is switched off. You can remotely immobilize, you can mobilize the vehicle remotely. So they can see all this data much before it's actually happening. They can figure out if this guy is capable of paying his EMI this month because he did not drive enough. He's been driving for the last 6 months, but this month kuch ho gaya. Maybe he was not well. Maybe there was something in his family. You can create a way to be able to offer him something that allows him to pay it over the next 3 months. No one wants to repo a vehicle. That much I have understood from the financing industry. They don't want to repo a vehicle. So they can offer things to him that allows him that comfort. कि ठीक है मैं करूँगा. You can see the vehicle. And I think that change is a little slow. These institutions are slow. But the change is happening. We've got Sundaram Finance, Sriram Finance already financing three-wheelers. Great thing, right?
As far as rural is concerned, they have a big penetration, Shriram, and so I think so. You have hit the nail rightly. Uh, Also, you have played the branding game more rightly, I would say, in terms of where the green hat experience, why you're buying a premium product, and at the same time, while your dealers are well equipped to make the customer feel premium about what he's buying, what experience is getting. What about the service aspect of it? How equipped are we to handle the ECUs? How equipped are we to handle the electronic part of it, the remotest of locations? That's an area because if I see, uh, you rightly said, e-commerce not more than 15 to 20% kind of a contribution. So owner driver 65, 70%. How are you
Not,
going to?
you'll be surprised, boss. मेरा ये मानना है हिंदुस्तान में, कहीं भी गुड़ रखोगे मक्खी आएगी, मक्खी को बुलाते रहो मक्खी आओ नहीं आएगी. You give a good product, you give them good service, personalized care, you have a spare room ready over there with spares, you have floating stock. Those are things that an OEM has to do. You can't take that in isolation later. अरे spare चाहिए था, अरे sorry यार अभी भिजवा रहा हूँ. नहीं होता बॉस ऐसा. You have to be upfront about it. You have to be 5 years ahead of the curve. You have to spend money in doing it. That's what gives them the. मैं इलेक्ट्रिक व्हीकल नहीं चलाता हूँ बॉस, 11 साल से इस इंडस्ट्री में. I expect a person to drive an electric vehicle for his livelihood. कुछ तो करना पड़ेगा ना चेंज करने के लिए. And that is the change. I think it's happening. You'll be surprised at how much confidence they have. Again, backed by data. ऊपर वाला सब देख रहा है. वो वाला जो ad था, but this is real data. And you can see what's happening remotely. You can see that something's going to fail. You can proactively ask this guy to come to the showroom or come to the service station where a part is ready for him and it gets replaced. होता है आज, हो रहा है. ऐसा नहीं है कि this is और कहानियाँ नहीं सुना रहा हूँ, मैं सच बता रहा हूँ.
So branding, technology, data monetization is what you're talking. It took electric vehicle industry to understand data monetization. I've been in this industry for 20 years. It's a very hard job to sell data, I'll tell you. So, yeah. Uh, Coming back to you, Pankaj, you know, we are used to around about 10, 12 OEMs in the two-wheel space, which have created an expectation of a rise of informed customer. Like Amitabh said, rural was a neglected customer in a way. It was an easier play to give a better experience, use technology, data monetization. In case of two-wheeler space, specifically with metros and even tier 2, tier 3, anybody who's operating mobile today is a qualified, raised and informed customer today, right? In your space, how do you think the differentiation space will come in the two-wheelers?
No, I think it has to do with brand to brand. If you look at, there are a few brands which definitely work very, very hard to invest in right partners and right infrastructure at the showroom and provide the right technology so that the experience is at the brand level. But there are few brands which just believe in only delivering vehicles without any experience, right? So I would say if you look at for the long term and to retain these customers, because most of the customers are going to use it for 3 and 5 years. Like Amitabh mentioned, the service business in EV is not that, let's say, important like in ICE because they're so-called, what do you say? They say कि bread हमारा service से आता है, butter हमारी sale से आती है. In EV, it is also changing. So it's not that there is no service revenue. I think as far as the overall experience concerned between metro and non-metro or so-called rural or urban, that's the new name which is coming up. Everybody is treating customer at the same level. Whether it's a physical infrastructure we look at, for example, us, our metro infrastructure will be little bigger. The elements would be little more. But you will have the similar experience if you go to a D or E category. I'm not talking about B and C. So that the customer does not feel any difference. It's not that same rural customer does not visit the metro city and get exposed to that brand. So I would say it depends on brand to brand how you want to communicate. The only difference could be the investment in the infrastructure. Where the rural investments may be little less, maybe at a cost of 1/5 or 1/4, while the metros will remain at maybe at one level. That's how they create the differences.
Okay. Anish, if I had to, highlight top 4 components that you'd like to see from a bomb composition level, localized here. There are a lot of component suppliers here. What are top 4 components that you see? And Achal, maybe you could also elaborate on that because it's good to talk, but if you can give some feeders that these are the top 3 components we are looking at. Any thoughts?
I think from our product perspective, what we sell in terms of an inverter and what we want to sell going forward in electronics, I think MOSFETs and IGBTs would be one or two of those components going forward because they constitute a high percentage of any power electronics item. So
Okay, let me reframe my question. Okay, because what we are talking about is a very large scale investments and technology involvement. I'm talking about there's a lot more mid and mid and mass scale electronic components also, like you said, PCB, assembly. I wouldn't imagine that unless you have those at the right volumes, how are we going to make sense? So beyond the MOSFETs and what other components do you think that you are still importing and or see localization could help in value addition?
then I would say I think bare PCBs, it could be connectors, uh, your battery terminal connectors, your power electronic convert connectors, your PCBs.
So automotive grade, you mean? Okay.
Yeah, with the right, temperature testing, AEC qualified components, I would say, because the temperature heat conditions in India are very different, specifically for a two-wheeler product as compared to what it is for a two-wheeler product in China. The two-wheeler product in China might be sub 25 kilometers an hour, whereas in India it's a high-speed two-wheeler product. It has to endure rain, flooding, high humidity, etc. So IP protection. And automotive grade for these components will be quite critical going forward, I would say.
Super. Actually, your thoughts on the components that we need to localize?
I think from our bus perspective, the biggest dependence is still semiconductors. But
Semiconductor.
that's a long way to go. Like again, when you think of the world as a whole, आपका TSMC है या वो है जो cells बनाते हैं या semiconductors बनाते हैं, even US is dependent on China और Korea for most of its semiconductors needs. आजकल आपका Apple भी बनने तो वहीं जाता है computer, right? All that semiconductor. Not to say we cannot do it. Yes, we can do it. The volumes are coming. But if you were to ask what will bring my product cost down, आप किसी भी electric vehicle की, I'm sure it's true for two-wheelers, three-wheelers, the biggest component is the battery, right, in the terms of the cost. And उसमें the biggest component is the cell. So, if we were to really bring down that cost, make it more viable, it has to be the cell.
Okay. Before I open up the floor for questions, Amitabh, you have come from an era where you have lost more money and then probably seeing some green shoots with the electric vehicle volumes coming in. What are the two strong points that you'd like to convey to EV industry to sustain and grow three-wheeler space? Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's not just about the large incumbent guys. I think it's true across the industry. Make good products. I think that's something that I sometimes miss. There's a reason why startups are called a nuisance by incumbents, right? Because we are constantly pushing by doing disruptive innovation. I'm not saying incumbents don't, they also do a lot of innovation. But there's a difference between sustaining innovation and disruptive innovation, like I was saying, Professor Clayton Christensen. So I think there's a need for disruptive innovation. Let's not do it step by step. Let's make giant leaps for this country. And that's what I would want everyone to do. If that is done, trust me, there's no looking back. EVs are here to stay. I don't think that is changing anytime soon. And I'm the first person to say subsidy or no subsidy. It is going to happen.
Absolutely.
हो रहा है, होएगा.
I'm glad to hear that, because any business case has to be without subsidy made viable. Okay, subsidies are bridge gap arrangements.
Correct. So I'll just tell you this point that all of the recent bus tenders have been without subsidy. And we've reached a situation over the last 5-6 years where the rates that we are getting without subsidy are comparable to the rates that we got as subsidy in the beginning. And this has been true because of localization and volumes. Economies of scales have kicked in. Localization
So
has
it's
kicked in.
factored in the rate that you ask for, right?
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, जब start हुआ था, in 2017, 2018, 19, those tenders, the rupee per kilometer rates we were seeing were similar and if not higher than the rates rupee per kilometer we are seeing without subsidy now.
So intent is there. I think so. We have very bright minds and capable team out here, well within in India. So with this, I'd like to open up Piyush here. Yeah, okay. Mic to him, please.
Hello everyone, my name is Piyush, I work for Bosch and thank you for very engaging session. I'm really enjoying it and being very transparent. I think there is a no nonsense session. You are talking on the top. Thanks, reality. I have two questions. So one on the short term growth of electrification. So now we talked about that, for EV to penetrate and I'm more looking on B2C. The price point has to come below 80. And now the challenge is how do we bring this? Because essentially an EV, 40% cost is drivetrain. Of that 40%, 60% is we can't control because we are importing. So what are these points which will bring this cost down in short term? I mean, I'm saying for 2 years. This is point one, and I had one more question to ask on long term. So now all we compare TCO, one of the factor we are missing is the GST, 28% which sits on top. So no moment even in long term, it goes to 6 million. And now even if we reduce 30% of cost, government is not going to, their money is getting lost. Then they put the 28% on top and will be at square one. So these are two questions, first on the short term and long term, what's your perspective?
Maybe Prashant, would like to take the question for two wheels. It's a two-wheel question.
Yeah, so I think very interesting point which you made on the battery piece. But I don't know how many of us have realized that the battery cost is also going down. So if you see in last 2 years, whatever it was, probably I would say around 20-25% down. And that's the impact of which probably some companies don't need subsidies now because that has come in here directly, indirectly in the entire value chain. And second, we also see is further going to go down. So it's nothing to do whether adoption increase in India or not. The battery prices are controlled from somewhere else. So we are very hopeful that the largest value component in the entire vehicle, that particular price will go down. Hence, the overall prices has to go down. The second, I think, some brands also have to look at creating the variants, right? If you look at 2 kilowatt, if you look at 1.5 kilowatt or 3 kilowatt, then starting price could be anywhere close to where everybody wants to go, which is called sweet spot around 75 to 85,000. And then the entire up variant can go up. So at Carnegie Green, honestly, we are not very worried about whether subsidy will stay or does not stay. We are definitely going to stay. And our entire business model is on without subsidy. As long as it stays, it helps more. It gets more sweetened. If it doesn't stay, we are fine. We'll still continue. I have no comments on the second point which you mentioned about the GST. Maybe Amitabh would like to comment.
Amitabh doesn't agree to that. Yeah, I know he is still wanting subsidies to go ahead.
No, I'm actually not. But what I just wanted to clarify is you'll be happy to know today the price of a diesel vehicle versus the price of again, I speak only for three-wheelers. The price of a diesel vehicle versus the price of an electric vehicle today is compatible. It's no more higher. I'm saying minus the battery. This is fuel, this is energy. We have to figure out ways and means of being able to give that component in a way that it lasts through the warranty period or the life of the battery pack. That is where I think very innovative financing schemes are now coming out, where battery or energy as a service, battery as a service, they're coming out, and you will start seeing more and more of that. It is already there. Price parity is already there between the diesel and the electric vehicle. This is a fact. We are doing this ourselves. I think it's the battery that makes a difference. PLI scheme for battery manufacturing, cell manufacturing in India, hopefully it will start getting, if visas are given out, it will start getting to roll out in the next couple of years. I think 25, 26 is what I'm hearing. We'll start making cells in India for India, lithium cells. Once that happens, I'm sure it will bring down the prices even further. So I see that trend. I think everything can be worked through if there is innovative financing schemes that come out, and I think that is the change that we.
I think it's a matter of perception also, with or without battery. I mean, somebody's paying upfront for the fuel for next 5 years. Let's put it that way. So it's a concept selling that we need to do in a way, right? Any more questions? Yeah.
Yeah, good morning. My name is Vivek Dhawan. I represent Omega Seki Mobility. So I think very interesting discussion on how actually we bring more financing to the EV space. So I know the technologies have been evolving, and the financiers have now a lot of confidence, and they are coming forward to finance. So my question is one thing which still has not been sorted in EVs, that is determining the second value of the vehicles, or the
Sorry,
pre-owned
we didn't
vehicles,
hear
right?
that. Once things not sorted?
The second, yeah, right. So is it something which will create excitement in the financing sector? If yes, so what is being done in that direction?
I
Yeah.
think so. It's an important, valid point. We really run short of time for an hour to cover lot many subjects. But any quick thoughts on secondary life of vehicles and ELVs and
I think without a doubt, Vivek, I mean, you know very well that residual value is very, very important to financiers. I think it'll take one cycle of EVs. So the first 5 years, I think EV three-wheelers at least started in 2020, late 2020. I think give it one more year, and you will start seeing, when the entire cycle of battery usage, vehicle usage over the 3 year warranty period and all that has happened. I have a feeling that will evolve better. There are companies who are already working on the battery side for repurposing batteries and recycling batteries in cells. So I think that component is taken care, but the entire vehicle and the residual value, the used market for electric vehicles, I think that is still to evolve. I have a feeling that in the next couple of years it will happen, maybe by OEMs, maybe by third-party people.
perfect. Thanks.
I,
The
I
gentleman,
completely
yeah.
agree with Amitabh. If you look at I think when 2 years back when it started, few brands were only giving warranty for 1 year, then it increased to 2 years, then it increased to 3 years. Now it's around 5 and 8 years also, right? So that shows the confidence in the battery itself. So there are two set of players which are working on battery second life. One, the battery OEMs itself, because they want to use it for longer, if not in the same vehicle, in some other vehicle or some other purpose. The second, there are independent companies which are coming into this space, which are very, very exciting. And we know that they're working hard. And we see that in next 2 years, once the first cycle is over, which is generally 3 years, then we see this second life starting coming in, right? And there is a huge space because whatever volumes have been sold and there are much more batteries in the space, they needs to be recycled or controlled or used for second opportunity.
I think so. There's a massive opportunity for second use of battery beyond automotive applications into energy storage also. And as far as the residual part is concerned, I think so. It's partially also the mindset because if you see even the ICE vehicles today, after 7 to 10 years of usage, you practically don't go and ask what is the price of my engine here. You get a depreciated value for it, and I think so we'll be almost there. If you remove the 40-50% cost of the battery, you will get almost similar value for your vehicle. So I think so it's a awareness that we need to also generate, and maybe from experience there will be more confidence. I think so. There was we have time for one last question.
Hello. My name is Virat Shetty from Prevalent Automotive. So it is a really great panel and a very important, informative session as well. So I have two questions. One, is there any new technology coming in battery space, something like aluminum air or something like supercapacitors? And second comes as a question from my side is, there are new OEMs that are coming up with battery technologies, be it Amaraja or be it Excite as well. So as Mr. Pankaj sir has already said, there is a battery cost which is going down because the cells are also coming in a cheaper price. Will it actually become more cheaper if it is manufactured in India as well?
Very, very good question. I think so. It on a larger context also talks about the rare earth security also, where we move from lithium ion, lithium phosphate to maybe sodium ion. Amitabh, you are the right person probably to elaborate on the battery tech, and maybe Anish, if you want to add any points.
Sure. So battery technologies are changing very, very rapidly. I am privy to the fact that sodium has already come out in China. CATL has started manufacturing cells and battery packs. Aluminum air has been around for a while. In fact, Israel has been the leader in that space, and they are actually I know of a company that flies planes using aluminum air batteries. So it's just that graphene is going to happen very quickly. And of course, a lot of other technologies. But I do believe that this technology takes a while to commercialize. Assume it's going to be 8 to 10 years before anything becomes good. Sodium is going to be the first. I think aluminum will follow suit. Graphene will probably come later. I mean, there's a solid state. There are lots of things that are happening in this space without a doubt. So I think that is going to continue to evolve. There is no doubt about it.
So I think I resonate what Amitabh has just mentioned. I think even to get confidence on EVs, it's taken us a few years. I think if chemistries will change, which they are changing at this moment, I think everything has a maturity timeline. And if you look at sodium ion, which I believe Cherry in China is using, along with CATL, and then aluminum and air with Finergy in Israel, I think everything will take 5 to 7 years to commercialize. You'll start with NMCs, probably LFPs are getting more traction in China, which will have more applications in passenger vehicles in India. And then obviously you'll have other chemistries in the future. So it won't happen so fast. I think there's a comfort level that the OEM as well as the customer has to get, which has its own duration, I would say.
I think so too. I'd like to add just two things that may probably drive, I may be wrong, but our rare earth resources. Two, the battery technology itself is evolving and it's a multidisciplinary domain, right? It's multidisciplinary domain. So we need expertise on all those fronts to really indigenize that. So I think it's a transition phase, couple of years, like you said, sodium ion looks promising, so forth. I think so we are running short of time, and thank you so much for patiently listening to us, and panelists for an excellent session. Always pleasure to be here. Thank you very much, Rohit and team as well.
Thank you, everybody.